The gun was already touching her temple when the diner bell finally stopped ringing. Its echo lingered in the air, thin, metallic, fragile. Sally didn't move. Not when the shouting started, not when a chair overturned, not when someone near the window began to cry. Her arms remained folded across her cream uniform, red piping sharp against her deep brown skin. The apron at her waist was tied neatly, no loose threads, no shaking hands. The robber leaned closer, his black sleeves stretching tight as he pressed the handgun harder against her head, demanding a reaction. She gave him none. No widened eyes, no trembling breath, no plea for mercy. Fear had a language, a pulse, a scent. She spoke none of it. And that was the first thing Kang Eryun noticed. Not the weapon, not the chaos unraveling around the room, not the way the customers collapsed to the floor in frantic obedience. He noticed her breathing. Slow, measured, controlled. He noticed the robber's wrist trembling before hers. He noticed the shift. Because power isn't always loud. Sometimes it stands still. The robber barked an order, voice cracking with adrenaline, pushing the barrel harder into her skin as if pressure could force submission. Sally turned her head just slightly, not away from the gun, but toward him. Her voice was level. "If you're going to hold it there," she said quietly, "at least keep your hand steady." The robber faltered, only for a fraction of a second, but Kang saw it. And in that second, the balance in the room tilted. The man with the gun looked reactive. The woman without one looked unbreakable. Kang Eryun did not blink, because he wasn't watching a robbery. He was watching a recruitment.
If you're drawn to stories where power moves in silence and danger hides behind discipline, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Korean Boss Diaries, where composure is currency and every calm face hides a calculated mind. If you enjoy cinematic crime stories with psychological tension and quiet dominance, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because in this world, the most dangerous person is rarely the loudest one.
The bell above the diner door rang once. Then again. The second chime wasn't from courtesy, it was from force. The door slammed open so hard it struck the wall behind it. Two men entered with the kind of speed that doesn't belong in places that smell like coffee and buttered toast. Black hoodies, gloves, masks pulled tight over their faces. The first gun appeared before the shouting did. "Everybody down!" The words cracked through the room like glass breaking under pressure. Chairs scraped violently against the tiled floor. A fork clattered from someone's trembling hand. A woman near the window gasped and slid halfway out of her booth before collapsing to her knees. The bell above the door continued to sway, metal tapping against metal in a thin, persistent rhythm that didn't match the panic swelling beneath it. Sally stood behind the counter, one hand resting lightly on the edge of a ceramic mug. The coffee inside it trembled from the vibrations in the room. She didn't. Her cream uniform was crisp under the fluorescent lights, red piping tracing her collar and sleeves like quiet precision. Her apron tied perfectly at her waist, no wrinkles, no rush. The second robber vaulted over a table, boots landing heavily against linoleum. He swung his gun across the room in wide, uncertain arcs, adrenaline leaking into his movements. People obeyed the command to get down. Bodies lowered, voices cracked. Someone began to pray under their breath. Sally placed the mug down, slowly, deliberately. Her fingers released the handle without tremor. The first robber reached her in 3 strides. His arm shot forward, black sleeves stretching tight as the handgun pressed firmly against her temple. The barrel was cold. His breathing wasn't. It came in short bursts, fogging the edge of his mask. His other hand grabbed at her shoulder as if bracing himself. "Get on the ground!" His voice broke at the edges. Sally remained upright, arms folding calmly across her torso, shoulders loose, chin level. Her almond-shaped eyes didn't search the room for help. They didn't close. They didn't widen. They stayed steady. The robber pressed the gun harder, as if pressure could manufacture fear. The customers watched from the floor, frozen between terror and disbelief. A waitress should cry. A waitress should beg. A waitress should collapse. Sally did none of those things. The bell above the door finally stopped moving. The silence it left behind was heavier than the shouting. The robber shifted his weight. His wrist twitched almost imperceptibly under the strain of holding the gun in place. Sally's pulse remained invisible, her breathing slow enough to be measured, controlled enough to feel intentional. Across the diner, in a booth near the window, a man in a charcoal three-piece suit sat perfectly still, hands loosely clasped on the table, eyes dark and focused, not on the gun, on her. The chaos spread outward in widening circles, but at the center of it, Sally stood unmoved, and that was the moment the robbery stopped being about money. He had not touched his coffee. Steam rose from the cup in slow spirals, dissolving into the air between him and the window. Outside, traffic moved in indifferent rhythm. Inside, panic fractured the room into sharp, uneven pieces. Kang Eryun remained seated. His back rested lightly against the red vinyl of the booth, shoulders squared, posture exact. The dark charcoal of his suit absorbed the fluorescent light rather than reflecting it. Crisp white shirt, black tie centered perfectly at the collar. Nothing about him suggested urgency. Nothing about him suggested fear. The first robber swept the room again with his weapon, shouting for wallets, phones, compliance. The second kept the gun fixed at Sally's temple, as if she were the only variable he didn't trust. Kang's gaze did not flicker toward the shouting. He did not track the weapon. He watched her breathing, measured, even. A slight expansion beneath the fabric of her uniform. No spike in the throat, no shallow inhale, no involuntary swallow. He shifted his focus to the robber's hand. There, a tremor at the wrist, a tightening of fingers around the grip. Adrenaline, uncontrolled. He noted the difference. Power, when stable, does not shake. The customers on the floor radiated noise without speaking, shoulders quivering, palms pressed to tile. The smell of fear gathered heavy in the air, metallic, sharp. Sally did not contribute to it. Her arms remained crossed, not defensive but contained. Chin level, eyes steady, not challenging, not submissive. Controlled neutrality. Kang leaned back slightly, the motion almost imperceptible. He had seen men trained in violence lose composure under less pressure. Soldiers, enforcers, executives facing ruin. Most people performed bravery until the barrel touched skin, then instinct took over. She did not perform, she did not react, she absorbed. The robber barked another order directly into her face, pushing the gun harder against her temple as if proximity would break her. Her gaze did not move to the weapon, it stayed on him. Not defiance, assessment. Kang's fingers interlaced loosely on the table, a subtle adjustment, nothing more. He recalibrated the scene. Two unstable aggressors, a room full of reactive civilians, and one woman who appeared emotionally insulated from chaos. Interesting. The second robber kicked over a chair, the crash loud enough to ripple through the room. A child whimpered somewhere near the back. Kang's pulse did not change. He watched Sally's eyes instead. No dilation, no flinch, no micro-withdrawal. Stillness under threat is not accidental. It is trained, or it is earned. The robber's breathing grew louder, faster. His control was slipping. Sally's was not. Kang Eryun did not smile, but something in his expression sharpened. The robbery was no longer unpredictable. It was informative. And for the first time since the door had burst open, his interest had nothing to do with the money. It had everything to do with her.
Don't move. Don't even breathe.
I'm not going anywhere.
You're playing a dangerous game.
The robber moved closer, close enough that the barrel of the gun pressed harder into her skin, close enough that his breath touched her cheek through the thin fabric of his mask. "On the ground," he snapped again, louder now, sharper, as if volume could compensate for something slipping out of his control. Sally didn't lower her gaze. She didn't uncross her arms. Her shoulders remained relaxed, the red trim of her uniform steady beneath the flickering lights. The diner hummed with fear, shallow breathing, muffled sobs, the scrape of someone shifting on the tile. But she stood in a pocket of silence. The robber adjusted his grip, his elbow locked tighter, the gun angled slightly downward, then corrected, as though he were reminding himself how to hold it. "Are you deaf?" he barked again. Her expression did not change. Not defiance, not submission. Absence. The kind of stillness that makes noise feel childish. He grabbed her upper arm with his free hand and squeezed, hard. Her body moved an inch with the force, then stopped. No gasp, no sharp intake of breath, only a slow exhale that felt intentional. The robber's eyes, barely visible through the mask's cutouts, flickered. He was expecting resistance, or collapse, or tears. He got none of it. "Look at me," he demanded. She already was. Her almond-shaped eyes held his, steady and level, not challenging him, not pleading, measuring him. That was the shift. Subtle, invisible to anyone not looking for it. The gun was still in his hand, but control had begun to migrate. His breathing grew louder, faster. Her breathing did not follow. The robber shoved her once, a frustrated motion meant to restore dominance. The force echoed against the counter behind her. She absorbed it, feet planted, chin level. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet enough to feel deliberate. "You're shaking." It wasn't an insult. It wasn't even loud enough for the customers on the floor to hear, but he heard it. His grip tightened reflexively. For a split second, the barrel wavered. Not much, just enough. Across the diner, Kang's gaze sharpened. The robber pulled the gun back half an inch, then pushed it forward again, as if trying to erase the lapse. "Shut up," he snapped, but the words cracked. Sally didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. The power dynamic had tilted. He was reacting. She was not. The room could feel it, not consciously, but instinctively. The fear had shifted tone, no longer explosive, but uncertain. The robber's anger rose to fill the gap. He raised his voice, cursed, threatened the room again. But every movement felt slightly exaggerated now, slightly compensating. Sally remained exactly as she had been when the bell first rang. Arms crossed, breathing slow, unmoved. And for the first time since the robbery began, the man holding the gun looked less like a predator and more like someone trying very hard to appear like one.
"You think you're tough? Move and you're dead."
Go ahead. Pull the trigger.
The shift embarrassed him. You could see it in the way his shoulders tightened, in the sharp inhale he took before speaking again. Instability doesn't like to be noticed, it resents exposure. His grip on the gun grew rigid. "Don't test me," he snapped, louder than before. Sally didn't respond. Her silence felt heavier now, not passive, not submissive, intentional. The second robber was shoving cash into a backpack near the register, knocking over a display of napkin holders in his haste. Metal clattered across tile. A customer whimpered. "Wrap it up!" that robber shouted. The one holding Sally didn't move. He was locked on her, on the absence of fear in her eyes, on the steadiness of her breathing. He shoved her again, harder this time. Her back hit the counter with a dull thud. Cups rattled. A spoon slid off the edge and shattered on the floor. Still, her arms remained folded. Still, her chin stayed level. Something flickered in his posture. Not dominance, but frustration. He pulled the gun away from her temple suddenly and pointed it toward the ceiling. The movement was abrupt, reckless. For a split second, the room froze in confusion. Then the shot exploded. The sound tore through the diner like a physical force. Plaster cracked overhead. Dust drifted downward in a pale cloud. A woman screamed. A child began crying openly now. The echo of the gunshot lingered longer than the bell had. The robber's chest heaved. His ears rang. You could see it in the way he blinked too hard. He lowered the weapon back toward Sally, breathing fast, as if expecting her to have broken, to be shaking, to be on the floor. She was exactly where she had been. Deep brown skin, unflinching under fluorescent light, uniform undisturbed except for a faint scatter of ceiling dust along her shoulder. Her breathing had not changed. If anything, it had slowed. The gun trembled when it returned to her temple, not violently, but enough. Her eyes shifted briefly, not to the barrel, not to the damage in the ceiling, but to his hand. She saw it, the tremor. So did Kang. From his booth, he watched the aftermath unfold without moving an inch. His coffee remained untouched, his posture unaltered. The shot had been meant to restore authority. Instead, it exposed fragility. The robber barked another threat at the room, voice cracking around the edges of it. Sally held his gaze. No anger, no panic, only a quiet recognition. He needed the noise. She did not. The dust settled slowly between them, and in that suspended silence after the violence, the contrast became undeniable. One of them required chaos to feel powerful. The other required nothing at all. The ringing in the room had not fully faded. It hung in the air after the gunshot, thin and metallic, vibrating through bones and glass and breath. Dust drifted downward in slow motion, settling on tables, on shoulders, on the red piping of Sally's uniform. The robber was still shouting, still trying to stitch authority back together with noise, but the sound felt distant now. Sally's focus shifted, not abruptly, not obviously, just enough. Her eyes moved past the gun, past the trembling hand, past the chaos folding and unfolding across the diner floor, and found him. Kang Eryun sat exactly as he had been since the door burst open, charcoal suit immaculate, hands loosely clasped on the table, shoulders squared. The fluorescent light caught the clean line of his jaw, the calm set of his mouth. His long, dark hair was pulled back neatly, not a strand displaced. He was not looking at the ceiling, not looking at the customers, not even looking at the robber who had just fired a shot. He was looking at her. The eye contact lasted less than a second, but it held weight. Not curiosity, not concern. Recognition, the kind that passes between people who understand something unspoken. He did not nod. He did not smile. His expression remained composed, analytical, a man processing data. Yet something sharpened in his gaze. Confirmation. Sally did not react outwardly. Her arms stayed crossed, her breathing stayed slow, but something subtle adjusted in her posture, not a shift in stance, but in alignment. She understood instinctively that he had seen it, the tremor, the instability, the imbalance in the room. He had witnessed the same crack in the robber's control that she had. Across the diner, the second robber shouted that it was time to go. The first hesitated, still caught between rage and uncertainty, still pressing the barrel to her temple as if proximity could reclaim dominance. But the room no longer felt centered around him. It felt balanced between two still figures, the man in the booth, the woman against the counter. The robber glanced sideways for a fraction of a moment, following the direction of her gaze without meaning to. His eyes flicked toward Kang, and what he saw there was not fear, not defiance, just calm, measured, uninterrupted. He looked back at Sally quickly, as if to reassure himself the power dynamic hadn't shifted, but it had, silently, without spectacle. The second robber grabbed his arm. "Let's go." This time he allowed himself to be pulled. The gun lifted from her temple. The pressure vanished, but the air between Sally and Kang remained charged. The robbers retreated toward the door, boots heavy against tile, adrenaline burning out into frantic escape. The bell rang again when they shoved it open. Once, then twice, and before the sound fully settled, Sally and Kang broke eye contact, not because the moment ended, but because it had already said everything it needed to.
You didn't blink.
No.
The sirens arrived before the silence did. They grew from a distant murmur into a sharp, rising wail that cut through the night air and slipped through the diner windows like a second wave of intrusion. Red and blue light flickered against the glass, staining the walls in restless color. The robbers were already gone. The bell above the door swung violently from their exit, its echo thinner this time, less dramatic, more final. Customers began to lift themselves from the floor in uneven movements. Hands shook, voices overlapped. Someone laughed too loudly, the brittle kind of laughter that follows survival. Sally remained standing. Her arms were no longer crossed, but they were not trembling either. She brushed a faint trace of ceiling dust from her shoulder and adjusted the knot of her red apron as if resetting the room required nothing more than order. A police cruiser screeched to a stop outside. Another followed. Officers rushed in with urgency that felt almost delayed compared to what had already unfolded. Questions began immediately. "Is anyone hurt? Did they take anything? Ma'am, are you okay?" Sally answered when necessary. Calm, direct, economical. "Yes. No. I'm fine." She did not elaborate. Across the diner, Kang Eryun stood. It was the first significant movement he had made since the door burst open. He adjusted his suit jacket with a single smooth motion, as though preparing for a meeting rather than stepping out of a crime scene. His coffee sat untouched on the table, steam long gone. An officer glanced toward him briefly, assessing, then moved past. Kang did not appear rattled enough to require attention. He walked toward the counter, not hurried, not hesitant. The flashing lights outside painted brief strokes of red across his face as he approached. Sally noticed him before he spoke. She did not turn fully. She didn't need to. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to be heard privately, far enough to remain unthreatening. For a moment, he said nothing. His gaze studied her face with the same quiet precision as before, checking for cracks, for delayed reaction, for the aftermath most people cannot suppress once danger passes. There were none. "You didn't blink," he said, finally. His voice was low, even, without praise or surprise. A statement, not a question. Sally met his eyes. "No," she replied. Another beat of silence. The sirens continued outside, less frantic now, controlled. Kang's gaze shifted briefly to the faint mark at her temple where the barrel had rested, then back to her eyes. Most people collapse after. Adrenaline leaves. A subtle pause. Yours didn't. It was not admiration, it was evaluation. Sally held his stare. "And yours?" she asked. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "I was never in danger." Neither was she. That was the unspoken understanding. An officer called out for statements again. Kang stepped back slightly, giving space without retreating fully. "Chaos exposes structure. Yours is rare." Another brief pause, measured. Then he turned toward the door. The flashing lights framed him in silhouette as he stepped outside. He did not look back, but Sally watched him leave, and for the first time since the bell had rung, she felt something shift. Not fear, recognition. Three nights later, the diner closed at 10. By 10:15, the chairs were flipped onto tables, the floors mopped, the scent of bleach replacing coffee and fried onions. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead with tired insistence. Sally untied her red apron with the same precision she tied it, folded it once, then again, placed it beneath the counter. Routine restores equilibrium. She stepped outside into the cool night air. That was when she saw it. Across the street, beneath a flickering street lamp, a black sedan idled. Engine low, steady, controlled. Not flashy, not tinted to theatrical darkness, just deliberate. The car had been there the night before, and the night before that. Always parked at the same angle, always running, always still. Surveillance without spectacle. Sally did not hesitate on the sidewalk. She locked the diner door behind her, checked the handle once, then stepped away as if she had not noticed anything at all. The sedan did not move. No windows rolled down. No lights flashed, but she could feel it. Attention. Not predatory, not urgent, measured. She walked past the car without turning her head. Her reflection slid across the polished surface of the door panel, deep brown skin under streetlight glow, hair secured in its tight bun, posture upright, arms relaxed at her sides, chin level. As she passed the driver's window, she sensed the presence inside before confirming it. Kang Eryun sat behind the glass, charcoal suit even at this hour, crisp collar, dark hair pulled back neatly, one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at her. Their eyes met through the tinted glass. There was no nod, no greeting, no invitation, just acknowledgement. The engine continued its low hum. Sally did not break stride. She crossed the street toward the bus stop as she did every evening. The sedan remained where it was, not following, not advancing, waiting. The bus arrived in a wash of headlights and hydraulic sighs. She boarded without glancing back. From her seat by the window, she could still see the car, still idling, still present. A reminder, not a threat. As the bus pulled away, the sedan remained parked beneath the flickering lamp, shrinking in the distance. It did not chase, it did not retreat. It stayed exactly where it had been, like a marker placed in her life. When she stepped off the bus near her apartment complex, the night felt unusually quiet, too ordered, too aware. She walked the final block alone, and though she did not look behind her, she understood something clearly now. The robbery had ended, but the observation had not. This wasn't intimidation, it wasn't coincidence, it was evaluation. And evaluation, unlike chaos, is patient. 3 nights, same position, same silence. The black sedan was not forcing a decision. It was giving her time to realize one had already been made.
I build systems. I recruit stability. I don't make the same offer twice.
On the 4th night, the sedan was no longer across the street. It was parked directly in front of the diner. Engine off, lights dark, waiting without disguise. Sally noticed before she reached the door. She unlocked the diner anyway, stepped inside, turned on the lights. The ritual mattered. At exactly 8:17, the bell above the door rang once. Not violently, not urgently, deliberate. Kang Eryun entered as if he had reservations. Charcoal 3-piece suit, crisp white shirt, black tie aligned precisely. His long dark hair pulled back into its low tie, controlled, intentional. He did not scan the room. He already knew it. He chose a booth near the window. The same one. Sally approached with a notepad she did not need. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Tea," he replied. "Hot." Her hand did not shake as she poured it. Steam rose between them. For a moment, neither spoke. The diner was quiet this early, empty but for the two of them. He studied her the way he had that night, not her uniform, not her face in isolation, but the totality of her posture. "You never asked why I was there," he said. "I assumed," she replied. "And what did you assume?" "That you weren't there for the food." A faint shift in his expression, not amusement, recognition. "Kang Eryun," he said finally, not offered casually, stated with intention. The name settled between them. Sally did not repeat it, but she knew it. It carried weight in certain circles, business acquisitions that ended quietly, partnerships that never dissolved publicly, a network built on precision and silence. "You watched," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because instability reveals itself under pressure. Most people fracture when the structure around them collapses." He lifted the teacup, took a slow sip. "You didn't." She leaned slightly against the counter behind her, balanced. "You fired a shot?" she asked. "No." A pause. "But I saw the moment before it." His gaze sharpened subtly. The tremor in his wrist, the loss of control. "You noticed it too." She didn't confirm. She didn't deny. He continued. "I build systems," he said. "Businesses, networks, alliances, structure. They fail when people panic." His eyes held hers evenly. "I don't recruit aggression. I recruit stability." The word lingered. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you were the calmest person in that room, including me." That was not flattery. It was calculation. "You weren't afraid," he added. "I was aware," she corrected. Another subtle shift in his gaze. Better answer. He set the cup down carefully. "In my world," he said, "pressure is not an accident. It is a test, daily. If composure breaks, consequences follow." The air between them thinned. "What happens if it doesn't?" she asked. "Then you rise." Silence again. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small black card on the table. No logo, no title, just a number. He stood. "You're wasting your equilibrium here," he said. Then, after a beat, "I don't make the same offer twice." He walked toward the door. The bell rang once as he exited. Sally looked down at the card, the weight of the name still settling in her chest. Kang Eryun. Not a threat, not a savior, a door. And doors once opened rarely close the same way. The bell finished echoing long before she moved. The door had closed behind him with the same restrained sound it always made, soft, mechanical, unremarkable. But the air he left behind was different, denser. Sally remained standing beside the booth for several seconds after Kang Eryun disappeared beyond the glass. The diner lights hummed above her. Outside, traffic continued as if nothing had shifted. The small black card lay on the table. Matte, unbranded, a single number printed in clean white ink. It didn't look dangerous. It looked precise. She picked it up. The surface was smooth, heavier than it should have been. She turned it over. Blank. No instructions, no pressure, just possibility. The diner felt larger without him in it, emptier. She walked back behind the counter slowly, the way she had during the robbery, the same measured steps, the same controlled breathing. Routine restores structure. She reached for her apron, paused. Her hands hovered in the air a fraction longer than usual. For the first time since the gun had pressed her temple, something unsettled her. Not fear. Awareness. The robbery had tested her composure. Kang had tested her awareness. But this tested her trajectory. She slid into the booth he had occupied, sat where he had sat. From here, the entire diner was visible. Every table, every exit, every blind spot. She understood why he chose it. Control begins with perspective.
The memory replayed with unsettling clarity, the tremor in the robber's wrist, the instability masked as aggression, the precise moment power shifted. She hadn't panicked, she hadn't shaken, she hadn't broken, but she also hadn't felt alive, not until someone recognized it, recognized her. The black sedan, the watchful patience, the way he had said her calm was rare, not flattering, evaluating. The safe choice would be simple: throw the card away, return to routine, serve coffee, fold aprons, live unnoticed. But unnoticed had never meant safe, it had only meant small. She looked down at the card again. In Kang's world, pressure would not be random, it would be engineered, daily, systematic. She imagined it. Meetings where voices never rose but consequences did. Rooms where composure determined survival. A place where her stillness was not strange, but valuable. Her thumb brushed over the printed number. The diner clock ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, headlights swept briefly across the window, then vanished. Sally exhaled slowly. For the first time, her hands were not crossed. For the first time, she wasn't reacting to chaos, she was choosing it. Not because she was reckless, not because she was desperate, but because when the gun touched her temple, she had not felt afraid, and that realization was more dangerous than the weapon ever was. She slipped the card into her pocket. The bell above the door remained still, but something inside her had begun to move.